Welcome to Coruzant Technologies, home of the Digital Executive Podcast.
Welcome to the Digital Executive. Today's guest is Jim Anderson. Jim Anderson is the Chief Customer Officer for Aktana, the pioneer in intelligent engagement and commercial AI for the global life sciences industry. As Chief Customer Officer, Jim is focused on ensuring consistent customer success and optimization of processes and services across Aktana deployments globally. An experienced leader, Jim has more than 2 decades of experience in the pharmaceutical industry. Previously, Jim was responsible for developing strategy and driving multi-channel solutions for world-class brands at both ZS Associates and Merkle. Jim also spent 11 years at Bristol Myers Squibb in sales, marketing, and engineering, and he was the managing partner at 2 small businesses, including a successful startup. Well, good afternoon, Jim. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks, Brian. Glad to be here.
Awesome, Jim. I appreciate it. We've been waiting for this podcast for a little while, and we're pretty excited. So I'm going to jump into the questions. You've got quite the background as a product manager. You're in operations, and now you're the Chief Customer Officer at Aktana. Could you share with our audience what drives you and what has contributed to your success?
Well, thanks. Yeah, it's kind of a big title, but not really. It's overstated title. But when I think back about my success, et cetera, it kind of sounds corny, but what drives me is learning. And being at Aktana the last few years, we've been in what can easily be called hypergrowth. When you're growing a company the way we've been growing, the challenges are every day, and you're learning something new. It's been a good challenge, and it's kind of what's really driven me, and what's driven me through my whole career.
Thanks for sharing, Jim. I appreciate that, and so does our audience. So, Jim, as you know, everybody globally has had to make these major shifts in 2020 to adapt to this new normal, right? Could you share with us what you're doing to help your organization stay relevant in this economy?
Yeah, sure. So, this has been a crazy year for sure. And I think anyone you talk to in the pharmaceutical industry and probably many others, there's the accelerated shift to digital that's occurring. And, anyone that's been in pharma for the last decade knows that this shift to digital has been coming and worked on for a long time. And this was just kind of a big push that we've seen. But there's a lot of people that have been working on multi-channel or surround sound and omni-channel, whatever the phase name was at the time. But, it's something we've all been going and working towards. And Aktana's been busy working in that space too. I think, the last year, as everyone's really jumped on it heavy, we've been able to upgrade a bit of our algorithms and, shift our focus there a little more, but it's really building on the foundations we've had already. And the one other thing that we've heard a lot from our customers, and I don't think it was driven so much from the pandemic piece, but it is something that was important to them and was becoming more important this last year. And that was being able to scale into some of their smaller markets and do it inexpensively. And that's something that is required to shift for Aktana as well, and something that we've developed some opportunities around that will allow our customers to scale further in smaller economies.
I love that. And this is really a great question. And a lot of my guests do talk about some of the things that they had to do. They were backed into the corner and needed to innovate, and they needed to help their customers. And it was very challenging. I'd have to say everybody came through with flying colors. I mean, that's the silver lining, obviously, on the flip side of the pandemic. But I think that's really shown the world that united, we can really take on these types of challenges. So thanks for sharing. And Jim, your company obviously is leveraging some newer and emerging technologies, I'm sure. But is there anything that you could share specifically you're focused on to improve the customer's experience?
Yeah, one of the things that we all learned this last year was how fast you need to be able to react and change. As our environment overall, our economic environment, everything was changing. There wasn't an ability to plan too far out, and you just had to be able to make changes along the way. And for us, that means being able to make quick and efficient updates and finding or developing features that are going to be useful. And, as we were all shifting from, sales reps that were able to call on physicians to sales reps that sometimes could call on physicians to not being able to call on them in person at all, there was a lot of changes. And then, the shift back, we're a global company. So we saw the shift back in China going much sooner than we've seen it, obviously, in the Americas or in Europe. And so our ability to be flexible and release updates, et cetera, quickly was a big deal for us. Another thing that we've had to focus on that might be different for other companies, but like I mentioned before, our hypergrowth has been significant. And that means that as you're building your platforms, they have to, sustain a lot more traffic than maybe you had originally thought you would have to. So we've spent a lot of time this last year, focusing on our stability and improving, the integration of our platforms, et cetera. Those are kind of 2 areas that we worked on. And the only other thing I'd mention is that our ability to have partners with some of the large companies in this space like Veeva and IQVIA has really allowed us to be able to come through this, I guess, in maybe a little better spot than we might have thought.
Thank you for sharing, Jim. I do appreciate that. So, Jim, I really want to talk about the big question that our audience really wants to learn about is Jim Anderson. Is there something you can share from your career experience that would be helpful for those looking to grow their career in technology or leadership?
Yeah, sure. It's a fun question. Everybody likes to talk about themselves. When I think through my experience in my career, which, I've been extremely fortunate, and I think timing and luck plays a lot into everybody's paths. But when I think about how I thought about my career a long time ago was, I knew I wanted to be a leader in a technology company. What's interesting is I was a mechanical engineer at the time. And so when I said that to myself and thought, that's where I want to get to, I thought of engineering firms. And, I think the key takeaway, not in a mechanical engineering manufacturing type firm now. I'm at a large software company, or small software company in a large software business. And what I take away from that is you can have your long-term goal, and then you just have to keep an eye out for opportunities along the way that allow you to move towards that goal. And when I was working at Bristol Myers Squibb and had an opportunity to work as a sales analyst, I took it because it was interesting to me, and I had some skills there from doing analytics with engineering. I had no idea that it would send me down this path to where I am now, which is working heavily in AI and analytics. And now I'm a leader in a technology company, which is what I had originally set out to do. But it's much different than what I originally thought it would be. But the path to get here was each step was looking for roles that would help me progress without straying too far from where I thought I wanted to get to. I don't know if that makes sense a lot, but it's really kind of how I think anybody goes through their career, which is you got to think about where you want to get to long term, be willing to take big risks if you need to. And you're going to end up probably somewhere different than where you thought, but hopefully close to where you want to get to. What do you think about that, Brian? Is that something similar to your path, maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's an amazing story that you have. Growth comes in all forms, right? And people's careers are forged sometimes with a particular one incident in their career may have set them off on a different path. So I do appreciate that story. And Jim, I just want to let you know it was a pleasure having you on today, and I look forward to speaking with you real soon.
Great. Thanks so much, Brian. I really appreciate you having me on.
Bye for now.